Discipline is not willpower. Chapter 1. Why willpower always fails. Discipline is not willpower. Most people believe they are undisciplined. They believe they are weak. They believe something is wrong with them. They believe they just need more willpower. And every time they fail again, they repeat the same sentence in their mind. I just need to try harder. But what if that belief itself is the problem? What if discipline has nothing to do with willpower at all? You've seen this pattern before. In the morning, you feel motivated. You plan the day. You promise yourself today will be different. You'll wake up early. You'll focus. You'll avoid distractions. You'll finally stay disciplined. And for a few hours, it works. But by evening, something changes. Your energy drops. Your mind feels heavy. Resistance shows up. And suddenly you're doing the exact things you promised yourself you wouldn't do. Scrolling, procrastinating, avoiding, giving up. At night, guilt arrives. You blame yourself. You call yourself lazy. You decide tomorrow you'll use more willpower. And the cycle repeats. Here's the truth no one tells you. If willpower actually worked, you wouldn't need to restart your discipline every Monday. You wouldn't need motivational videos every week. You wouldn't feel strong one day and powerless the next. Willpower feels powerful in theory, but in real life it collapses. And it's not because you are weak. It's because willpower was never designed to carry your entire life. Willpower is a limited resource. It drains. Every decision you make, every emotion you regulate, every urge you resist, it costs something. You wake up with a full tank. By night, that tank is empty. That's why discipline feels easy in the morning and impossible at night. That's why you can control yourself for a few hours, but not consistently. And instead of questioning the system, you question yourself. Think about this honestly. When you're tired, hungry, stressed, or overwhelmed, do you suddenly become a worse human being? Or do you simply have less energy to fight impulses? Willpower doesn't disappear because you lack character. It disappears because your nervous system is exhausted. And exhaustion cannot be fixed by forcing yourself harder. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline means control. They think discipline means resistance. They think discipline means pushing through discomfort again and again. So they turn discipline into self-punishment. They fight themselves every day. And fighting yourself every day is not discipline. It's war. Here's something uncomfortable but freeing. If discipline required constant willpower, no one would stay disciplined for long. Not athletes. Not writers. Not successful people. The people you think are highly disciplined are not constantly forcing themselves. They are not battling urges all day. They have something else. They have systems. Look closely at people who seem consistent. They don't rely on motivation. They don't rely on mood. They don't rely on strength. They rely on structure. They don't wake up and ask, do I feel like doing this today? They remove the question entirely. And because there is no debate, there is no struggle. Willpower creates decisions. Systems remove decisions. And the fewer decisions you make, the less willpower you need. But you were never taught this. You were taught to be strong, not to be smart. Every time you say, I need to control myself, you assume the problem is inside you. But most of the time, the problem is around you. Your phone, your environment, your routine, your expectations. You're trying to resist what you constantly place in front of yourself. That's not discipline. That's torture. Imagine telling someone to sit in a room full of junk food all day and rely on willpower not to eat it, and then blaming them when they fail. That's what most people do with their lives. They surround themselves with distractions, temptations, and chaos, and then feel ashamed for not being disciplined. Willpower fails because it demands perfection. It expects you to be strong, even when you're tired, focused, even when you're overwhelmed, disciplined, even when life is heavy. And life doesn't work that way. You are not a machine. Here's the most important thing you need to hear in this chapter. You don't fail because you lack discipline. You fail because you're trying to use willpower to do a job it was never meant to do. Willpower is meant for emergencies, not daily life. It's there for short moments, not long systems. When you depend on willpower for everything, burnout is inevitable. And burnout doesn't make you disciplined. It makes you numb. Notice how often discipline collapses. During emotional moments, stress, loneliness, boredom, anxiety. In those moments, your brain isn't looking for discipline. It's looking for relief. And willpower is too weak to fight emotional needs. This is why discipline based on force never lasts. Because force ignores emotion. And emotion always wins. Let's talk about guilt for a moment. Guilt is what keeps people stuck. Every failure becomes proof that something is wrong with them. They don't change the method. They punish themselves harder. More rules, more pressure, more self-criticism, and discipline becomes associated with pain. So your mind resists it, not because you're lazy, but because your brain avoids pain. If discipline feels heavy, your approach is wrong. True discipline feels light, not easy, but lighter, because it removes friction instead of creating it. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't need willpower. You don't need motivation. You don't need disciplined speeches. You just do it. Why? Because it's built into your environment, your routine, your identity. You don't wake up deciding whether you feel disciplined enough to brush. You removed the decision. That's the difference between forced discipline and real discipline. Real discipline is automatic. Forced discipline is exhausting. The biggest lie you were sold is this: if you were serious, you'd be disciplined. No. If discipline required seriousness, only miserable people would succeed. Discipline works when it's designed, not when it's demanded. This chapter is not here to motivate you. It's here to free you. Free you from the belief that you are broken. Free you from endless self-blame. Free you from trying harder when you should be thinking differently. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer battles. You need fewer decisions, fewer temptations, fewer negotiations with yourself. You need a life that makes discipline the default. In the next chapter, we will talk about the truth most people never realize. You don't lack discipline. You lack systems. And once you understand that, everything changes. For now, remember this: if willpower always fails, it's not because you are weak. It's because you are using the wrong tool. And that means you're not hopeless. You've just been fighting the wrong way. Chapter 2. You don't lack discipline. You lack systems. Most people don't fail because they are weak. They fail because their life is built to make failure easy and success unnecessarily hard. But instead of questioning the structure of their life, they question themselves. They say, I'm not disciplined. I don't have self-control. I start strong, but can't continue. What they really mean is this: my life has no system to support consistency. Look closely at your day. How many decisions do you make? Before noon? What to check first? What to reply to? What to eat? What to ignore? What to postpone? Each decision costs energy. And by the time you reach the thing that actually matters, your energy is gone. Then you blame discipline. But discipline was never the problem. Decision fatigue was. Here is something freeing to hear. Highly disciplined people are not constantly making good decisions. They are making fewer decisions. They don't rely on motivation. They don't rely on mood. They don't rely on feeling strong. They rely on systems that decide for them. A system is not a schedule. A system is not a goal. A system is what happens, even when you don't feel like it. It's the structure that carries you on low-energy days. It's the design that protects you when your willpower disappears. Think about the things you do effortlessly. You don't need motivation to unlock your phone. You don't need discipline to open social media. You don't need willpower to eat what's easily available. Why? Because your environment is doing the work. That's a system, just not a helpful one. Your life already has systems. They are just working against you. Your phone placement, your notifications, your room layout, your daily sequence. These things are shaping your behavior more than your intentions ever could. Most people think discipline is an internal trait, something you either have or don't have. That belief keeps them stuck because traits are hard to change. But systems? Systems are external, and external things are adjustable. When someone wakes up early every day, it's rarely because they are heroic. It's because their nights are designed differently. When someone eats healthy consistently, it's rarely because they resist temptation all day. It's because temptation is not constantly in front of them. When someone works deeply every day, it's not because they fight distractions. It's because distractions are removed before the fight begins. Systems don't ask you to be strong. They assume you won't be. And that's not an insult. That's intelligence. Most people design goals, not systems. They say, I want to wake up at 5. I want to work out daily. I want to focus more. But they never ask, what system will make this inevitable? Without a system, a goal is just a wish, with pressure attached. Here is a hard truth. If your discipline depends on how you feel that day, you don't have discipline. You have motivation. And motivation is unstable. Systems remove emotion from action. You don't ask, how do I feel about this? You simply follow the structure. And because there is no debate, there is no drain. Most people try to build discipline on top of chaos. They keep the same environment, the same distractions, the same habits, and then they expect different behavior. That's not discipline. That's denial. Let's talk about mornings. Many people fail their entire day before it even begins. They wake up and immediately face chaos. Phone, messages, noise, decisions. And by the time the day starts, they are already exhausted. A system simplifies mornings. It reduces options. It creates a predictable flow, not to control you, but to protect you. The same applies to work. People say, I can't focus. But their environment is designed to interrupt them every 2 minutes. Notifications, tabs, access. They are not unfocused. They are overstimulated. No amount of willpower can beat constant interruption. Only design can. Here's an uncomfortable realization. You cannot outdiscipline a badly designed environment. If your system invites distraction, distraction will win. If your system rewards comfort, comfort will win. Not because you are weak, because systems always win. This is why self-control advice often fails. It assumes you can fight your environment forever. But biology doesn't work that way. Your brain looks for the path of least resistance. Systems define that path. Think about consistency. People admire consistency, like it's a personality trait. It's not. Consistency is the result of low friction. When something is easy to start and hard to avoid, it happens. That's why habits matter. Habits are systems inside your behavior. They remove thinking. They remove negotiation. And once something becomes habitual, discipline disappears. You no longer need it. Most people wait until they feel disciplined to act. Systems flip that. They make action inevitable before feeling shows up. And feelings follow behavior, not the other way around. This is why relying on inspiration is dangerous. Inspiration feels powerful, but it fades. Systems feel boring, but they stay. And boring is sustainable. There is another reason. Systems matter. They reduce guilt. When you fail without a system, you blame yourself. When a system fails, you adjust the system. No scam. No identity attack. Just improvement. That shift alone changes everything. You stop saying, I'm inconsistent. You start saying, this setup doesn't work. And that is solvable. People who live disciplined lives don't constantly think about discipline. They think about design. What they see, what they touch, what they access first, what comes next. They shape the flow of their day. So discipline becomes the default. This is why extreme discipline often collapses. It relies on force, not structure. Force creates resistance. Structure creates flow. Here's a simple example. If your workout clothes are buried in a drawer, exercise requires effort. If they are visible and ready, exercise requires less thought. That difference matters more than motivation. The same principle applies to everything. Food, focus, sleep, learning. Design decides behavior. Most people are fighting themselves when they should be redesigning their life. They push harder. Instead of rearranging, they punish themselves. Instead of simplifying, and they wonder why discipline feels exhausting. Let me say this clearly. You are not broken. You are just relying on willpower to solve a design problem. Once you build systems, discipline stops being dramatic. There are no emotional speeches, no constant self-control battles, just quiet consistency. And that consistency does something powerful. It changes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. That identity shift doesn't come from force. It comes from systems that work even when you don't feel strong. In the next chapter, we will talk about a belief that keeps people trapped. The myth of self-control. Why resisting urges often makes them stronger. And why discipline is not about suppression. For now, remember this. You don't lack discipline. You lack systems. And systems are buildable, which means change is not about trying harder. It's about designing smarter. Chapter 3. The myth of self-control. Discipline is not willpower. You were taught a simple idea. If you want to be disciplined, you must control yourself. Control your urges. Control your desires. Control your distractions. Control your emotions. And if you fail, it means your self-control is weak. This belief sounds logical, but it's wrong. And this misunderstanding is the reason discipline feels like suffering. Let's start with something honest. Self-control feels heroic in the moment. Resisting temptation feels powerful. Saying no feels strong. But strength that relies on resistance does not last, because resistance costs energy, and energy is limited. Think about how often you try to control yourself. Don't check the phone. Don't eat that. Don't procrastinate. Don't get distracted. Don't give in. Your entire day becomes a series of don'ts. And every don't creates tension. That tension doesn't disappear. It builds. Here is the part no one explains. When you resist an urge, you don't remove it. You keep it active. Your mind keeps checking it. Am I still resisting? Is it still there? How long do I have to fight this? The urge stays alive because your attention is on it. That's why resisting something often makes it stronger. The more you tell yourself not to think about something, the louder it becomes. The more you suppress a desire, the more power it gains. Self-control turns discipline into a mental tug-of-war. And tug-of-war always ends with exhaustion. This is why discipline collapses at the end of the day, not because you suddenly became careless, but because you spent the entire day controlling yourself. By evening, there is nothing left to control with. Let's be clear about something important. Humans are not designed to constantly resist. We are designed to respond to our environment. Your brain looks for relief, comfort, ease. When self-control blocks relief, your brain looks for shortcuts, and it finds them. This is why self-control fails most often. During emotional moments, stress, loneliness, boredom, anxiety. In those moments, you're not fighting habits. You're fighting feelings, and feelings are stronger than rules. Think about the times You break your own discipline. It's rarely when life feels calm. It's when something hurts. A bad day. A disappointment. A sense of emptiness. Your brain doesn't want discipline then. It wants relief. And self-control has no answer for emotional pain. This is the myth. That discipline means saying no harder. That discipline means tightening control. That discipline means becoming stricter with yourself. But strictness creates rebellion, especially inside your own mind. Have you noticed this pattern? The stricter the rule, the stronger the urge to break it. Extreme diets create binge eating. Extreme routines create burnout. Extreme self-control creates collapse. Not because discipline is bad, but because suppression always backfires. Self-control treats urges like enemies. It assumes desire is the problem. But desire is not the enemy. Design is. Here is a hard truth. Most urges are not random. They are responses. Responses to cues. Responses to environments. Responses to emotional states. When you focus only on controlling urges, you ignore what creates them. That's like mopping the floor while the pipe is still leaking. Let's talk about the brain for a moment. Your brain has one main job: to conserve energy and seek reward. When something offers easy reward, your brain notices. Not because you are weak, because that's how the brain works. Self-control tries to fight biology. It says, just resist. But biology doesn't negotiate. When tired, the brain seeks comfort. When stressed, the brain seeks escape. When bored, the brain seeks stimulation.
No motivational quote.
Can override that. This is why discipline advice often sounds aggressive. Push harder. Be tougher. Stop being weak. But aggression toward yourself does not create consistency. It creates inner conflict. Inner conflict is exhausting. One part of you wants relief. Another part wants control. And the more they fight, the more drained you feel. Eventually, the part that wants relief wins. Not because it's right, but because it's tired of fighting. This is why self-control fails silently. You don't suddenly quit discipline. You slowly stop caring. You don't break rules dramatically. You drift. And then guilt appears. Guilt makes it worse. Because guilt adds emotional weight. Now discipline is associated with shame. And your brain avoids shame. So it avoids discipline. Let's say something clearly. If discipline depends on constant self-control, discipline will always feel heavy. And heavy things don't last. Look at people who seem calm and consistent. They are not constantly resisting. They are not constantly controlling urges. They are rarely even thinking about them.
Why?
Because their environment doesn't trigger those urges constantly. This is the key shift. Real discipline does not fight temptation. It avoids unnecessary temptation. It doesn't rely on control. It relies on design. Think about this simple example. If your phone is in your hand, self-control is required not to check it. If your phone is in another room, self-control is not required. The behavior changed, not because you became stronger, but because the situation changed. Self-control assumes the solution is inside you.
Design understands.
The solution is around you. This is why discipline advice that focuses only on mindset fails. Because mindset cannot override environment. For long. Eventually, environment wins. Always. Let's talk about the illusion of discipline. People admire those who resist temptation publicly. They look strong. But private discipline is rarely about resistance. It's about invisibility. The temptation isn't present. True discipline is quiet.
No struggle.
No drama. No heroic effort. Just fewer triggers. Self-control feels powerful because it's visible. Design feels boring because it's invisible. But boring systems create extraordinary consistency. Another problem with self-control is perfection. It demands that you always say no. One mistake feels like failure. And once you feel like you failed, you stop trying. Design allows flexibility. One slip doesn't destroy the system absorbs it. Self-control makes discipline personal. If you fail, you feel like you failed as a person. Design makes discipline mechanical. If it fails, you fix the setup. No identity attack. This difference matters, because discipline should not damage your self-respect. Let's talk about habits. Habits are not built by self-control. They are built by repetition. In stable conditions, the brain loves patterns. When behavior repeats, in the same context, it becomes automatic. No willpower needed. This is why habits feel effortless. Not because they are easy at first, but because they stop requiring control. Self-control is temporary. Habits are permanent, at least until the environment changes. Most people try to use self-control to build habits. They force themselves repeatedly, but forcing behavior in unstable environments creates inconsistency. The brain doesn't learn. It survives. The goal of discipline is not to control yourself forever. The goal is to reach a point where control is no longer required. This is the part most people never hear. Discipline is meant to disappear, not become a daily struggle. If discipline still feels like constant resistance, you are still in the self-control phase. And that phase is not meant to last. Here is a freeing realization. You are not bad at self-control. Self-control is bad as a long-term strategy. The moment you stop trying to suppress urges and start redesigning what triggers them, discipline becomes calmer. Not perfect, but peaceful. This chapter is not telling you to give in to every urge. It's telling you to stop fighting unnecessary battles. You don't need to resist everything. You need to remove what doesn't need to be there. In the next chapter, we will talk about what discipline actually is. Not force, not resistance,
but design.
How discipline becomes something you build into your life instead of something you wrestle with every day. For now, remember this. If self-control feels exhausting, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were taught to fight yourself instead of redesigning your world. Chapter 4. Discipline is design, not force. Discipline is not willpower. Most people think discipline is about force. Forcing yourself to wake up.
Forcing yourself to focus.
Forcing yourself to say no. Forcing yourself to keep going. And when forcing doesn't work, they assume they are weak. But discipline was never meant to be forceful, because force creates resistance, and resistance creates exhaustion. Real discipline works differently. It doesn't push you. It pulls you. Think about how often you've tried to force change. You make strict rules. You set aggressive goals. You promise yourself there will be no excuses. For a few days, maybe weeks, you hold on. But slowly, pressure builds. The routine feels heavy. The rules feel restrictive. The effort feels unnatural. And eventually something breaks. Not because discipline failed, but because force always does. Force ignores reality. It ignores energy levels. It ignores emotions. It ignores environment. It ignores being human. Design respects reality. Design assumes you will get tired. Design assumes you will lose motivation. Design assumes life will interfere. And instead of fighting these truths, design works around them. Here's the shift that changes everything. Discipline is not about controlling behavior. It's about shaping conditions. Look at your life, honestly. Your behavior is not random. You don't wake up and decide
to be distracted.
You don't consciously choose to procrastinate. You respond to what's around you. The noise, the layout, the access, the friction. Design decides behavior before willpower ever enters the picture. This is why force feels personal. When you fail, you feel like you failed. Design makes failure impersonal. If something doesn't work, you adjust the setup.
No scam.
No self-attack. Just refinement. Think about how cities are designed. Traffic flows where roads allow it. People gather where space is invited. No one blames drivers for traffic jams when the roads are poorly designed. But with discipline, we blame the person, not the system. Design changes that. It asks better questions. Instead of asking, "Why can't I control myself?" it asks, "Why is this behavior so easy right now?" Most habits exist because they are convenient. Most bad habits are not chosen. They are default. They happen because they are easy, available, and familiar. Force tries to fight defaults. Design changes defaults. If distraction is one click away, you will get distracted. If junk food is visible, you will eat it. If your phone is the first thing you see, you will check it. Not because you are weak, because you are human. Design doesn't say, "Be stronger." Design says, "Make this harder to do." And suddenly, discipline becomes unnecessary. Think about how often you say, "I should stop doing this." Design replaces that with, "I don't encounter this anymore." That difference matters. Force relies on constant effort. Design relies on structure. Effort drains. Structure supports. This is why strict routines fail. They look disciplined, but they are brittle. One disruption, and the whole system collapses. Design creates flexibility. Even when life shifts, the system adapts. Here's something important. Discipline is not about perfect days. It's about predictable days. Predictability reduces decision-making, and fewer decisions mean less mental fatigue. When your day has a clear shape, you don't negotiate with yourself constantly. You don't ask, "Should I do this now?" You already know. That removes friction. Force creates inner conflict. One part of you wants comfort. Another part demands discipline. Design removes the conflict. It aligns behavior with ease. This is why design feels calm. There is no shouting inside your head. No internal arguments. Just flow. Let's talk about identity for a moment. Force-based discipline says, "I must act like a disciplined person." Design-based discipline says, "I live in a way that makes disciplined behavior natural." One is exhausting. The other is sustainable. People who appear disciplined rarely think about discipline. They think about setup. What they see when they wake up. What they touch first. What happens next. They build sequences. And sequences build habits. Design understands something force ignores. Your brain loves patterns. When behavior happens, in the same order, in the same context, it becomes automatic. No willpower needed. This is why starting is the hardest part. Once something is started consistently, momentum replaces motivation. Design focuses on starting points, not finishing points. Force says, "Do the full workout." Design says, "Put on your shoes." Force says, "Work deeply for hours." Design says, "Open the document." Small beginnings create big consistency. Force chases intensity. Design builds continuity. Intensity burns out. Continuity compounds. Most people want dramatic change. Design creates quiet change. Quiet change lasts longer. Here's another truth. Force-based discipline makes you rigid. Rigid systems break. Design-based discipline makes you adaptable. Adaptable systems survive. Design also respects rest. Force treats rest as weakness. Design treats rest as maintenance. Without maintenance, everything breaks, including discipline. When discipline is designed, rest is part of the system, not something you feel guilty about. This is why people burn out, trying to be disciplined. They design effort, not recovery. Force ignores recovery. Design includes it. Let's talk about failure. Force-based discipline turns failure into proof you are not disciplined. Design-based discipline turns failure into data. What didn't work? What caused friction? What needs adjusting? No drama, just learning. This mindset shift alone changes your relationship with discipline. You stop fearing failure. You start refining systems. Design also removes pressure from motivation. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to follow the setup. And motivation often appears after action begins, not before. Force waits for motivation. Design moves without it. Think about how many times you waited to feel ready. Design doesn't wait. It prepares. This is why discipline through design feels almost boring.
No emotional highs. No dramatic promises.
Just quiet repetition. And repetition builds identity. Over time, something changes. You stop saying, I'm trying to be disciplined. You start saying, this is just how I live. That shift is everything. Design turns discipline from a daily battle into a background process, like gravity, always there, not noticeable, but powerful. Force keeps discipline in the spotlight. Design lets discipline disappear. And that's the goal. Let me say this clearly. Discipline is not meant to feel heroic. It's meant to feel normal. If your discipline requires constant effort, constant reminders, constant self-talk, it's not discipline yet. It's force.
Design is what allows discipline
To survive low-energy days, bad moods, busy seasons, unexpected stress. Force collapses there. Design holds. This chapter is not asking you to become stricter. It's asking you to become smarter. Stop asking, how can I force myself? Start asking, how can I design this so I don't need to force myself? That question changes everything. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something surprising. Why discipline feels hardest for smart, self-aware people. Why understanding alone doesn't create consistency. And how overthinking quietly destroys discipline. For now, remember this. Discipline is not something you demand from yourself. It's something
you design into your life.
And once you understand that, discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes a structure. Chapter 5. Why discipline feels hard for smart people. Discipline is not willpower. If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you're not careless. You think deeply. You analyze. You question. And yet, discipline feels harder for you than it seems for others. That confusion hurts. Because you know you're capable. You understand concepts quickly. You see patterns. So, why is consistency still difficult? This chapter is for you. Smart people often suffer silently. Not because they don't understand discipline, but because they understand too much. They see every option, every consequence, every flaw, and seeing too much creates hesitation. Overthinking is intelligence turned inward. You don't just act. You evaluate. Is this the best way? Is now the right time? What if I fail? What if there's a better approach? By the time you decide, energy is gone. Action gets postponed. And postponement looks like lack of discipline. But it's not. It's cognitive overload. Smart minds crave optimization. You don't want to just do something.
You want to do it right.
Perfect timing.
Perfect plan.
Perfect system. But perfection delays movement. And discipline requires movement. More than correctness. Many smart people wait until clarity feels complete. But clarity often comes after action, not before. Waiting for full understanding keeps you stuck in preparation mode. And preparation feels productive.
So you don't notice the delay.
There's another hidden problem. Smart people often tie their identity to competence. You don't like looking bad. You don't like being average. You don't like failing publicly. So you avoid starting things you can't immediately excel at. Not because you're afraid of effort, because you're afraid of visible imperfection. Discipline asks for repetition. Repetition includes mistakes. And mistakes threaten the identity of being capable. So you hesitate. This is why smart people often start strong and then stop. The beginning feels exciting. New ideas. New insights. But repetition feels dull. And dull feels like wasted potential. So you look for something new. something stimulating. Your brain is used to novelty. Learning gives you dopamine. Understanding feels rewarding. But discipline is not about learning. It's about doing the same thing when it's no longer interesting. And that feels uncomfortable for a mind that loves stimulation. Smart people also tend to overestimate motivation. You believe if you understand why something matters, you'll naturally do it. But knowing why does not guarantee follow-through. Understanding does not equal execution. This creates self-judgment. I know what to do, so why am I not doing it? That question hurts, because when you know better, you expect better. And when behavior doesn't match intelligence, shame appears. Shame is dangerous. It doesn't create discipline. It creates avoidance. You stop engaging with the habit altogether because it reminds you of the gap between who you are and how you're acting. Another reason discipline feels harder is emotional awareness. Smart people feel deeply. They notice mood changes. They notice internal resistance. They notice emotional shifts. And because they notice them, they listen to them. Sometimes too much. You tell yourself, I don't feel aligned today. I'm not in the right headspace. I'll do it when it feels right. But discipline doesn't wait for emotional alignment. If it did, nothing would ever be consistent. Emotionally intelligent people sometimes mistake awareness for permission. Awareness is meant to inform action, not delay it. There is also a hidden perfectionism, not loud perfectionism, quiet perfectionism, the kind that says, if I can't do it properly, I won't do it at all. That mindset kills consistency, because consistency is messy. Some days are strong, some are weak. Discipline accepts unevenness. Perfectionism rejects it. Smart people also question authority. They don't blindly follow routines. They ask, why this habit? Why this method? Why this structure? This is good. But without boundaries, questioning becomes paralysis. At some point, you have to stop asking and start repeating. There's another uncomfortable truth. Smart people often rely on potential. You know you could do it, and knowing you could sometimes replaces actually doing it. Potential feels like progress, but it's not. Discipline requires humility. The humility to repeat basic actions. The humility to be bored. The humility to show up imperfectly. Smart minds often resist humility because they're used to complexity. But consistency is simple. Not easy. Simple. This is why discipline advice often fails smart people. Generic rules feel insulting. Basic routines feel beneath them. They want elegant systems. But elegance in discipline comes from simplicity, not sophistication. Smart people also think long-term. They imagine the perfect future version of themselves. And then the present feels disappointing. So they disconnect from small steps. But discipline lives in the present, not in vision. Let's say this clearly. Discipline is not a test of intelligence. It's a test of willingness to repeat without novelty. And that is hard for minds that crave stimulation. Here's the shift that helps. Stop asking your intelligence to carry your discipline. Intelligence is for understanding. Systems are for consistency. Your job is not to think harder. Your job is to reduce thinking where action is required. The smarter you are, the more important this becomes. Smart people don't need more insight. They need fewer choices, fewer options, fewer decisions, fewer mental debates.
Structure gives that.
When structure is in place, intelligence becomes an advantage again. You stop overthinking execution and start using your mind to refine the system. This is how discipline becomes easier, not by becoming less intelligent, but by protecting your intelligence from being wasted on trivial decisions. Let go of the idea that discipline should feel intellectually satisfying. It often feels boring, and boring is not a problem. Boring is stable. You don't need to be inspired to be consistent. You need to be contained. Contained by routines. Contained by structure. Contained by design. Once you accept that discipline is not a reflection of how smart you are, but how well your life is designed, the shame dissolves. And when shame dissolves, consistency begins. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something powerful and confronting: how your environment is already controlling you, not in obvious ways, but in silent, daily ways, and how changing your surroundings can do more for discipline than changing your mindset ever could. For now, remember this: if discipline feels hard for you, it's not because you're incapable. It's because your mind is powerful and your systems are weak. Fix the systems, and your intelligence will finally work for you.